When Marcus walked into the brightly lit office for his interview, he carried with him not just a folder of resumes, but years of experience, hard work, and the hope of building a better future for himself and his family. He had prepared for weeks, dressed in his best suit, and carried himself with confidence. Yet, the moment the employer glanced at him, Marcus could feel the weight of silent judgment. The questions were rushed, the conversation cold, and within minutes the rejection was delivered. Not because Marcus lacked skills or passion, but because of the color of his skin. He left the building that day with his dignity intact, but with a wound too familiar to countless others who have faced the same prejudice. It was not just a missed job opportunity, it was another reminder of how deep injustice runs in places where equality should live. Months passed, and Marcus refused to let the rejection define him. With determination burning in his heart, he started his own business from scratch. It wasn't easy. Long nights, constant struggles, and countless moments of doubt tested his resolve. But his vision was clear. He would succeed not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough because of their race or background. Slowly but surely, Marcus's business grew. What began in a small rented office space soon expanded into a thriving company with loyal clients, dedicated employees, and a reputation built on integrity, resilience, and hard work. Marcus transformed his pain into power and his rejection into resilience. The very door that once shut in his face only fueled his drive to build doors of opportunity for others. Then one day, the past came knocking. The same employer who once dismissed Marcus without hesitation now faced financial collapse. His business was crumbling, clients were leaving, and bankruptcy was at his doorstep. Desperate and humbled, he reached out to Marcus, the man he once deemed unworthy. With shaky hands, he asked if Marcus would consider hiring him. Imagine the irony. The man who turned away talent based on prejudice was now begging for a chance at survival from the very person he had rejected. Marcus looked at him, not with bitterness, but with the quiet strength of someone who had risen above hate. He had every reason to turn him away, to repay cruelty with cruelty. But instead, Marcus chose a higher road. He offered him a position, not because he had to, but because he knew true strength lies in forgiveness, not revenge. Marcus proved that dignity and humanity will always outshine arrogance and prejudice. This story is more than just about one man's journey. It is about the strength to rise above injustice, the courage to keep moving when the world says no, and the wisdom to show grace even when others have shown hate. Marcus turned rejection into opportunity, and in doing so, he reminded us all that the struggles we face today can become the strength that shapes our tomorrow. If this story touched you, inspired you, or made you reflect on the power of resilience, don't forget to support us. Like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Struggles to Strength. Because every struggle carries within it the seed of strength, and every story has the power to change a life. Marcus entered the office that morning, with determination in his eyes and hope in his heart. He had spent years building experience, gathering knowledge, and preparing for the kind of opportunity that could change his life. Wearing his best suit and carrying his resume, he walked with confidence into the interview room, believing that his hard work would finally pay off. But the atmosphere quickly shifted. The employer barely looked at his papers. His tone was dismissive, and the conversation ended before it even began. Marcus realized with painful clarity that he was not being judged on his abilities, but on the color of his skin. Rejected, not for lack of talent, but because of prejudice, he left, the office with a heavy heart. That single moment was not just a lost job. It was a cruel reminder of how deeply unfair the world can be for someone who simply wants a chance to prove himself. Marcus could have given up. Many would have, after facing such cold rejection. But he chose another path. Taking the pain he carried, he used it as fuel to create something of his own. With nothing but determination, Marcus began building a small business from the ground up. The nights were long, the setbacks countless, and the struggles unrelenting, but he kept going. What began with borrowed resources and endless sacrifice slowly transformed into a company that earned respect, trust, and recognition. His business grew, his reputation spread, and the same society that once doubted him began to see him as a leader. Marcus turned every closed door into an opportunity to build his own, not just for himself, but for others who had faced the same discrimination. His journey became a living testament that rejection can be turned into resilience, and struggle can be transformed into strength. And then, in one of life's most unexpected turns, the past returned. The very employer who once dismissed Marcus so easily now stood before him, humbled and desperate. His own company had collapsed, his clients gone, his reputation broken. With nowhere else to turn, he came to Marcus, asking for a chance, asking for the same opportunity he once refused to give. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The roles had reversed, and Marcus held the power to decide his fate. He could have rejected him, repaid cruelty with cruelty, and walked away. But Marcus chose differently. He extended grace where once there was none, offering him a job not out of obligation, but out of strength. In that moment, Marcus proved that dignity, compassion, and forgiveness are far greater powers than prejudice or arrogance could ever be. His story reminds us that the struggles we face today can shape us into the strength we need tomorrow. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who need hope, and subscribe to Struggles to Strength, because every struggle carries within it the seed of strength, and every story has the power to change lives. As time went on, people around Marcus began to notice not only his success, but also the way he carried himself, with humility, strength, and vision. Young men and women who had once doubted their own worth found inspiration in his journey. They saw someone who had been rejected, humiliated, and underestimated, yet still managed to rise above it all. Marcus didn't just build a business, he built a legacy of hope. He began mentoring others, creating opportunities for those who had been told no too many times, opening doors for those who had been shut out. His story spread through the community like fire, reminding everyone that sometimes the most painful rejection can become the very thing that pushes you toward greatness. And as he looked back on his journey, Marcus understood something powerful. The struggle was never meant to break him. It was meant to shape him. His strength was not just for himself, but for every person who needed proof that no matter how many times the world tries to push you down, you can rise again and turn your pain into purpose. Marcus often remembered that day of rejection, the cold eyes of the employer, the dismissive wave of the hand, the sharp sting of being told he wasn't good enough. For weeks afterward, he carried that pain silently, asking himself why his efforts and achievements had been overlooked so quickly. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered his grandmother's words. "They may try to close the door on you, but you can always build your own." Those words became his anchor, and instead of allowing bitterness to consume him, Marcus poured his energy into learning, planning, and creating. Each setback became a lesson, and each lesson added a new brick to the foundation of his dream. He understood something most people don't, that true success is not just about talent, but about refusing to let rejection define your worth. The journey was not without sacrifice. Marcus faced nights when the lights almost went out because bills piled higher than profits. He faced moments when even friends doubted him, asking if it was worth continuing when failure seemed so close. But Marcus knew that greatness requires struggle, and every hardship was molding him into someone stronger. Slowly, clients began to notice his dedication. One by one, opportunities opened, and the small business he had built with nothing but determination began to flourish. His team grew, his confidence soared, and he proved, both to himself and to the world, that he was far more than the prejudice that once tried to hold him back. Years later, Marcus stood in a large conference hall filled with employees and partners, delivering a speech about resilience and perseverance. The applause that echoed through the room was not just for his success, but for his journey. And in the crowd that day was the man who had once rejected him. The employer sat quietly in the back, his eyes lowered, as if weighed down by regret. When the event ended, he approached Marcus, his voice softer than Marcus remembered, asking if there was a place for him in the company. The irony was almost overwhelming, but Marcus responded with grace. Instead of reminding him of the past, he reminded him that everyone deserves a second chance. By choosing forgiveness over revenge, Marcus not only rose above the injustice, he transformed it into an opportunity to teach others the true meaning of strength. Marcus's story traveled beyond his business, beyond his community. It reached people who had never met him, inspiring them to believe in their own worth, no matter how many times they had been told they weren't enough. His life became a beacon, proving that no rejection has the power. There came a day when Marcus walked past the same office where he was once rejected. The building looked smaller now, almost lifeless, its windows dim and the sign faded. He paused for a moment, remembering the sting of that morning years ago, when his confidence had been crushed by a single glance. But instead of anger, a quiet smile crossed his face. He realized that his worth had never been tied to that employer's opinion. It had always been within him. The rejection that once felt like the end of the road had become the very reason he discovered his true path. Marcus understood now that sometimes life shuts a door, not to keep you out, but to push you toward building a greater one. And as he stood there, he whispered to himself, "What was once my struggle has become my strength."